It's on, start recording. All right, so thank you everybody for hanging around. Thanks for obviously spending time out of your day today to attend the boot camps that obviously Ingram are running and the other vendors. The thing that I'll ask you to think about, one of the things that I'll ask you to think about is that you spend time here, you go away, but at the end of the day, when you finish, walk away, what are you going to do? Right, you're taking all this information, it's all good, you all write it down, but you've got to act on it. Okay? Now, as we've seen from other presenters, right, let's have a think, oh, here's our agenda, so look at the landscape, some Office 365 protection, what you should do, and some components and some takeaways. But the landscape today is, if you think back, if you've been in IT for a while, is that we've had this sort of security issue ever since computers have been around, right? Now, when you think about it, has it ever got any better, right? So the reality we're faced is that as we become a more digital world, it's actually getting worse and worse for obviously the reasons we're talking about, okay? So there's a systematic failure there, okay? Now, part of that systematic failure is that, as mentioned, people aren't taking responsibility for their IT systems. Now, a lot of people don't have the knowledge, don't have the skills to work in their IT or to understand security. So part of, I would suggest, your job as IT professionals is you need to educate people around the issues that security can pose for them, okay? Their standard mobile phone, their standard PC, anything, how important that's become to their life. Now, if you want to describe security to a SMB manager, to a CEO, you need to keep it as simple as possible. Okay, so the simplest explanation for security is this triangle. Has anybody seen this triangle before? Right? What goes with this triangle is you get to pick the two sides that you want, and that's the system that we can provide for you. You can't have all three. Right, so if you want something that's usable, it's not going to be cheap. Okay, you need to pick two sides. So you can have secure and you can have cheap, but it's going to be a real pain in the butt to work with. If you want something that's secure and usable, guess what? It's not going to be cheap. Okay? So if you need to talk to a SMB manager, if you need to talk to a business about security, what's the key pain point that you are going to talk to them about? What language are you going to use to make them understand how important security is? You're not going to talk to them in technical terms, in breaches, in ports, in vectors, all that sort of stuff. What are you going to talk to them about? How are you going to broach that subject? Right? You talk to them about the maximum pain they will feel in their business. What's the maximum pain they're going to feel in their business? Money. Okay? You need to convert to them and say to them, what's the cost of your business being offline for a day while we do a full restore? Multiplied by 8 employees by the time not being able to take orders. What's the financial impact of that? Because your managers, typically the people in SMB, don't understand technology. They don't see it. You need to convert that speak into dollars and cents. Come up with a spreadsheet, work out an average cost of a user, plug some numbers in and show them what the official cost is going to be to their business. That's the only way they're typically going to understand the value, right? These business owners have car insurance, fire insurance, business insurance, because they understand what? The financial ramifications if their business burns down. Same thing here, you need to talk to them in terms of finance, not in terms of technology. And again, this is the way, you can't have it all, right? There is no technology solution that will make security 100%. There is no option. It's a human process. Okay? That's the important thing here. And that's the opportunity that you've got to go in and talk to these people and help them understand how important security is, because I would suggest to you that every business you deal with in SMB, including your own business, is totally and utterly dependent on technology. Totally and utterly dependent. Right? Even a small outage. I mean, how many people here would have customers that can't afford, in their minds, to have their emails off for even a minute? Okay? If that's the thing, that's the pain point. You've got to go and talk to them about, you know what, you need to ensure this. So here's an example, as we talk about, many people that we've seen have talked about the landscape we face. So this is taken from a Microsoft analysis of the delivery of a crypto-locker virus coming from a single IP address, okay, that Microsoft saw through its threat management. Now what you can see here is that each one of these coloured bars indicate a slightly different strain of that crypto-locker virus. So the way that the signatures work out. You'll see that obviously this is the propagation, how much the propagation is, how many IP addresses it's attacking. And it falls off over time, but you'll notice that the colours change fairly rapidly, okay? So what we're seeing is that attackers are able to morph the signature or morph the delivery or morph the package they send to the user. Why do they do that? So they can defeat standard signature-based systems, okay? So your signature-based systems have a very low hit rate these days. Now, can anybody read what the timeline is? How quickly is that morphing? Every 5 minutes. They're morphing that delivery mechanism every 5 minutes, okay? There's no way, again, that a signature system can typically keep up with that sort of morphing rate. How can they achieve this? Right, they're using multi-dimensional servers, they're using the cloud-based computing, they're leveraging all the technologies that are available to anybody, okay? So as we've seen today, just to recap, is an attacker will send you a single email with a very small payload. Why are they sending you a small payload in an email? Because that allows them to morph it very, very quickly. If they send you a large exe, it takes a lot more to morph and all that sort of stuff. They'll typically send it encrypted, because that means that the packet can't be opened by the signature scanning, can it? Because it's an encrypted packet. Okay, when I send it to a user, right, what am I trying to achieve? What's a guaranteed way that you can get anybody to open an email you send them? What is the one guaranteed way that you can get them to open an email that you send them? You tell them that the email contains a virus, and if they open it, that virus will infect their system. I will guarantee you 80% of people will open it just to see what it does. Okay? And if you wanted to get through the signature, what you do is you say, this attachment is encrypted with this password, use this password to unencrypt it, and it's a virus, see what it does, okay? So the issue is always the human being, okay? Which we can't generally protect against, okay? So then what the attacker does is once they open the email and it executes in the background, as mentioned, it will go to a command and control server, and the command and control server will then download the malware, and then that will then typically start encrypting files or doing whatever it generally does, okay? At the end of the day, as mentioned, most of these people who do this are not in it to grandstand. They're in it to make money. They're a sophisticated business, as mentioned. They're operating across international borders. They're operating in ways that most people would struggle to even track them down. Okay? So let me ask you another question. In the world of security, how many vulnerabilities do you have to protect against? You're an IT person. You have to protect your customers against how many different sorts of vulnerabilities? Right? The answer is every single one. You have to protect every single one. Browser-based, email-based, operating system-based, all that. If I'm an attacker, how many vulnerabilities do I need to find? Just one. The odds are not stacked in your favour at all. Okay? That's the message you've got to get across to your users. Okay? They're never going to be 100% invulnerable. Okay? So the recent WannaCry malware, obviously, that one of the high-profile people that were affected by that were the NHS Trust Service in the UK. They were fully protected by a vendor who proudly announced on their website total full protection by vendor X of NHS this, this, and this. That got straight through. It brought those businesses to their knees. What did the vendor do? Change their website, so now it doesn't say that. No, it actually now says that vendor understands the security needs of this customer. Okay? But why was that? Why did that happen? What was the reason that that customer ended up having such a large infection? Why did that happen? Correct. So what they had is they had an unsupported operating system, one or two machines, not a lot, just one or two machines. Remember, one vulnerability is all I need that was unpatched, allowed inside the network, and then they could go from there. So again, all it takes is one oversight to allow this, okay? So how many of you have worked with customers that have a machine that you may not know of initially that's locked away in a cupboard that does some printer server software, runs some third-party app that isn't supported and has to run Windows 95, ME, XP, 2000, okay? So again, you need to go and talk to them and say, if you want to keep that, you need to sign a bit of paper to indemnify me and say that I have let you know that you are more or less a target, okay? So what's Microsoft and Office 365 doing for you behind the scenes? Well, they're doing things like the standard edge blocking scanners, but if you include the advanced threat protection, which we'll talk about in more detail, they're also doing additional protection. So let's have a look. The thing called the internet sends an unsolicited email. What happens when it hits the Office 365 edge? Standard stuff. Microsoft will check its reputation. Who's it from? What IP address? Has it been blacklisted? Is the reputation good or bad? They're doing standard stuff on all the emails that come in. So let's assume that it passes those. It then goes through the system to the next level. Okay, so what's the next level? Again, we're still going to apply our signature-based scanning, right? That still needs to be applied. We don't remove it, but again, it's not the only system that we rely on. Now, one of the other things you'll notice here is after it does its signature scanning, you can also elect at this point to say, I'm not going to allow EXEs inside my business. Many large banking organisations now do not even permit HTML emails. They're all text, or they convert them to text at the boundary. Because HTML can potentially have active code or do remote calls. If you want to, you can block those attachments. How many of you have a checklist that when you go to a customer who has Office 365, you go to them and you say, as part of our security process, which extensions would you like us to block? Well, you don't know. Here's the ones we recommend. BAT, COM, VBS, those sort of things. Right, so you have a checklist and you say, right, here is our standard recommended list of attachments we can block for you. Would you like any additionals added? Yes or no? So again, just do that as a checklist. Now, once you've checklisted something, how do you optimize for doing a checklist? How do you apply the optimal way of implementing a checklist? You apply a script. You write a PowerShell script that goes through and excludes the ones that you've nominated. What's the great thing about every Office 365 system? PowerShell will work against every single instance. But do you charge any less for the second time you run the script with a customer? Of course not. You're providing a solution, okay? So again, use the automation power of things like Office 365 to give you that ability to apply a standard policy across your customers. Once it's gone through our scanners, it goes to a reputation block, right? So what it does, obviously, is that because Microsoft is a data center composed of billions and millions of mail servers, they have access to a large bank of emails. They can look at that and say, that's interesting. We're seeing a lot of these style of emails turning up in customers, or these look very suspect. So they can apply that knowledge, thanks to machine learning, to the emails that they see from you or come into your customer. Okay, because they're getting a lot of traffic through their systems. Okay, so they're able to analyze that data and compare that to what they see coming in for your customers. Now, once it's gone through all that, it then applies heuristic clustering. So again, this is even more sophisticated analysis that says what it does is it will randomly pick emails that come in and it will start comparing them and it will say, that's interesting. This email looks a lot like it could be a problem. Are we seeing that anywhere else? Has that ended up in somebody's email box? Have we seen this before? So that's happening at a random stage for all customers. Not every email that your customer receives will be scanned like this, but it is still happening in the background over the volume of emails that come into Office 365. Once that happens, they take the suspect email, put it into a sandboxed environment which other people have spoken about, and they actually open the attachment. How do you know if an attachment's good or bad these days? Signatures aren't going to work. Users aren't going to work. So you're going to have to really open the attachment and see, does it change the registry? Does it try and access the network? Does it use evasive techniques? If it does, probably bad. We don't want to do it. But this is the way it's going. You have to open it real time. Okay? But that's happening on a random basis for all Office 365. But if you want that to happen for every single email that your customers receive, you would then implement the advanced features of the threat protection in Office 365, and it will take every single email that is suspect, and it will put it into a sandbox, and it will open it for you and verify whether it's good or bad. Okay? So this is the add-on feature you can have to Office 365 to give you the ability to open every suspect attachment in a sandbox to determine whether it is good or bad. It'll also take it through the anti-spam, phishing and the spoof filters as well, right? So the standard sort of thing, URL reputation, rules, content filters. But then what do the attackers do? The attackers will send a user an email with a legitimate link, www.sydneyandmorningherald.com.au. Because they know what? Does every user read their emails immediately when they come into the inbox? No, they generally stack them up. So then what they do is, a couple of days later, they'll change that link to point somewhere malicious. So when the user gets to it, it's got through the filtering technology because it was a valid link. Now they change it to a bad link in the back end. Okay? So therefore, the scanning technology you put in front of your emails won't have any impact because it's already passed through those scanners and been delivered to an inbox. It's been changed after the fact. Microsoft has the technology called SafeLinks. So what SafeLinks will do for you when you implement it is it will actually take that URL that's suspect. When the customer opens it, it will send it through a Microsoft proxy server. That proxy server will determine whether there is a suspect or a known issue or it's going to do bad things. It will warn the customer and give you the option as an administrator to configure whether the user is allowed to overwrite that and go somewhere, or they are totally blocked based on it being a negative response. But the main thing is it goes through a protected proxy server to the target server. If it's good, then it'll allow the user there. Now the other side of the coin here is when you have scanning technologies in front of your emails, they can only scan the email as it's traversing through its transport protocol. When it's delivered, it could still be a threat. It could still become a threat. It could be a 0 day that the scanners didn't pick up. The advantage of a system like Office 365 is because Office 365 hosts the email boxes, if they find an issue after the fact, what do they do with suspect emails? They can delete it, right? If there's a 0 day attack and I find half a dozen emails in there that are suspect because of this 0 day attack, I can remove them from the mailbox and keep the user safe. Okay? So therefore, as always, it's defense in depth. You don't let it straight through, you've got to put in different walls. So you've got your AV engines, you've got your reputation, heuristic scanning and clustering, but you can also implement the Office 365 Advanced Threat Protection. Microsoft also will give you the transport of all data into and out of Office 365 is encrypted. From the workstation to their servers is encrypted. Emails are encrypted with TLS. Okay? The other important point here is that data at rest is encrypted. Okay? And I'll come to an example of that, but let me ask you a question here. How many people here use BitLocker encryption on their customers' machines, on their customers' servers? How many of your customers have BitLocker encryption on their servers? Right? A very small percentage. Okay? You could send somebody in there, pick up the machine, walk out the machine, and they've got all the data. Here's another example. How many people here, you're all IT people, you're all smart people, you all know how to click options and turn things on. How many people here can put their hand on their heart and tell me, in all honesty, they have every device that they have brought into this room encrypted at rest? How many people here have their phone, their laptop, everything they brought into this room they have encrypted at rest. If you do not take advantage of the technology as the technology person, what chances have your customers have of applying that? You are not setting a good example for them. You need to go to them and say, I encrypt all my stuff because I'm paranoid and it's so easy to do. We just click this box and it's on by default. Or I push it out with a policy. Okay? So internet security, prevention of outbreaks starts with IT people. You are the skilled people. You are the knowledge people. You know more than anybody else the ramifications and what can happen. But guess what? Knowledge will not solve the problem. You have to take action. Right? That action starts with your customers, it starts with your family, but more importantly, it starts with what? Your own personal devices. Right? So please, encrypt all your devices at rest. It's very easy to do. Now let's look at an example here of what happens with SharePoint. You upload a file into SharePoint or OneDrive for Business. That file is shredded. It's broken into 64K chunks. Every 64K chunk is then encrypted with its own unique key. Right? Every 64K bit chunk is broken up, is encrypted with its own crypto key. The data is stored in multiple databases across the data center. The keys are then stored in a key store which is protected with another encryption key. When you download the file from SharePoint or OneDrive, it does the reverse. This happens on the fly. Every single file in and out of Office 365 is basically broken up into a million little components, uniquely encrypted, and then the keys to that encryption are then stored in another database. Every file, every database that Microsoft uses to store data has encryption enabled. Every disk that data sits on in Microsoft's data center is encrypted with BitLocker. This is the level that they're going to protect your data. Therefore, the argument that on-prem servers are more secure than the internet really doesn't hold up when you're looking at what you're getting included in the system. Now, what Microsoft recently announced, okay, just 2 days ago, was what can you do now to make it even more secure? How can I make this even more secure than it is today, from your point of view? Microsoft announced that you can now bring your own keys. You can upload your own keys into Office 365 so that when it's saved, it will be encrypted with your unique key. If you leave the service and remove that key, that data's junk. But that key management does what? It puts the emphasis back on somebody to manage it. If that key's corrupted, if it's lost or it's not configured, what happens? Data is gone. Microsoft can't get back to it. This is the risk. This is what you have to have people understand. Okay? But that's the level you can now go to. Bring your own encryption key to encrypt everything at rest. If you have customers who ask about the standards and certifications, things like HIPAA, which are American, the Australian privacy laws, all of this you can find in these documents here. Okay? Customers ask about security because why? They want to feel comfortable about their data. Right? You don't typically have to give them the low level, you just need to show them these are the resources that they can have access to. Okay? When a customer asks you about security in the cloud, asks you about security in Office 365, what's your response? How do you deal with that question? Most resellers bumble around and, oh, it's secure and trust this and do this. Right? You need to have a systematic approach. There are a number of videos that Microsoft make available, and you should have an FAQ and you should have a list of standard questions so that when they ask you one of those questions, you just rattle off a standard response. We have a lot of customers that ask similar questions to what you do. Here's a list of resources. Here's a couple of videos I recommend that you have a look at. If you have any further questions, let me know. You need to compile the resources like this link so that you can provide it to a customer. Now, if you provide that information to a customer, are they likely to deep dive and read every component? No. But they feel comfortable that they know there's somewhere they can go. They know someone has taken care of it. Okay? So these are the resources you need to build up. So that's what Microsoft is doing by default across all Office 365 plans. The Advanced Threat Protection is an add-on, which I'll come to. But this is what you should be doing. How many people have been and run Secure Score? Okay, very small amount, which we found in other locations, right? Secure Score basically allows you to rate the security settings of a tenant, compare that with the average, and then give you a list of things to do here to lift that score to a level that you're comfortable with. Okay? Now, apart from the technical gee whiz component of this, as a reseller who wants to make money, this is a tool that you can walk out of here today, walk to your closest Office 365 customer, run this script, and when you run this script or you run this system and show it to the customer, what reaction are you going to get? Thank you. Oh, profanity. The good thing here is once you've got over that, you've now got a list here of things that you can implement. When you open these things, what do you think it does for you? It gives you the link and shows you how to do it. So therefore, there's revenue for you that you can go in and run these sort of things immediately. Now, 3 months later, you can go back, rerun this, look at the score and say, okay, can we take it to the next level? So maybe part of the system you implement for your processes or your business is we're aiming to move our customers 20% up this scale every 3 months. Okay, and there is a tab here which will show it to you over time. So you could go out to a campaign to your customers and saying, with this tool we can show you what you have today, and our aim is to help you to move that 20 points or whatever every quarter, and the fee to do that is X, or we roll that in as part of our gold service or whatever you want to do. Okay, free tool, been available since September 2016. Okay, should be using that. The second thing I would point out is you need to know the difference between the plans. Okay, so as I've talked about before, is the vast majority of resellers and customers implement Business Premium. Why do they implement Business Premium? Because it's the cheapest plan. They're buying on price, they're not buying on value. You have to move that statement from price to value. You therefore need to sell the benefits of things like email archiving, mailbox hold, rights management, DLP, the advanced threat protection, and more. And typically you find those in the E3 or the E5 SKU, which I've highlighted here. As I've mentioned before, my advice to you is always is to sell the E3 or the E5 as the first option. Don't go in selling the Business Premium. Okay, there's more features. More features means what for you as resellers? More opportunity to make revenue, more opportunity for you to build services around. Okay? Now, another pushback that you generally get is you get, I'm only a one-man business, my clients are small, they're only 3 users. If you've got a 3-user accountant who does tax filings for customers, they have private information they need to protect. Data loss prevention, legal hold, all sorts of stuff. How many people have had customers that have had a rogue employee leave the business on bad terms? What's the last thing a rogue employee generally does before they leave a business? Shift delete all their emails. Okay? So again, legal hold overcomes that ability and maintains it. So you need to know these advanced features, and you really should be selling this package. Because A, it gives you more revenue, and it also means there is more security options. Now, security, much like the rest of life, is what? You get what you pay for. If you want minimal security, it's going to cost you nothing. But guess what? Right? You're probably going to be the target of the next attack because you have minimal security. Okay? The next one I suggest you need to keep abreast of is the Office 365 service descriptions. This will tell you in low-level detail what each plan does and doesn't include. How much legal hold do they get? How much retention do they have? Okay? You don't have to learn this by heart, but you certainly need to have it as your individual reference and your go-to. Now, the third website, or the third resource in Office 365 is what? What's the third resource that I recommend that you should know well or should be referring to on a regular basis? Thank you. I would suggest to you that the Office 365 roadmap, so roadmap.office.com, that will tell you of all the features that are rolling out in production that have been cancelled and all the changes that are coming. Okay? It will only give you a brief statement, most of which after you can look at my blog for a further breakdown. But the roadmap is a very, very important component. Now let me ask you another question on the revenue side. Most of you have probably sold Office subscriptions on the desktop to your customers, okay? So they can have the same version of Office across their machines, okay? How many of you use that as an opportunity to go back to your customers every month and say, did you know Microsoft has added this feature, that feature, this feature? It has added this to PowerPoint. It has added this to Excel. It has added this to Outlook. Most resellers install the product and then never talk to their customers again about the value of a subscription. Okay? It gives you, firstly, an opportunity to go and talk to every customer who has that subscription to make them aware of the new features. But more importantly, what does it do for your business? It gives you an opportunity to go and sell more services, to show the customer how to implement these advanced services that Microsoft are rolling into the product. Now, the other key component here that you need to understand and appreciate, much like on-prem days, Azure AD is now the single point of control for your on-prem Windows, your on-prem Linux servers, your cloud-based Microsoft services, non-Microsoft cloud-based services, plus mobile devices. Now, what I find very interesting is most people in the room, most people we speak to are MSPs. They make their money out of charging a per month, per device cost or fee to look after desktops and servers. Okay? Rarely, absolutely rarely do I see any MSPs who have a managed service around mobile devices. Okay? You're still doing managed services for on-prem, but what's the sales direction of on-prem big desktops, big iron, big servers? It's not up, it's certainly down. What's the sales trend for devices? Up, right? Now, part of this is twofold. A, you're not getting revenue from the ability to charge for a managed service around mobile devices, but what's the other issue with you not taking advantage of that or not implementing that? What's the other consequence of that? You are potentially at risk of somebody else walking in and wanting to do that. Okay? All it takes is for the CEO's phone to be left in a club lounge in Bangkok with the last important proposal, and if you can't wipe that device, if you can't happily make the CEO understand that there's no more data on that, he's probably not going to turn to you for a solution, is he? He's going to look elsewhere. Okay? So again, it's important to understand the difference in the features between the Azure AD version. So there is a free, basic, and premium, and an Office 365 version. Typically, we're looking at the difference between Office 365 and Azure AD Premium. So one of the big add-ons that you would get Azure AD Premium is typically password write-back. So when you implement Azure AD Sync to copy your users from on-prem to Office 365, it's a one-way copy. If you want your users to be able to change their password wherever they are, you need two-way, and that requires Azure AD. Then you can add all these other features that we'll talk about, okay? But out of the box, you should be doing things like this. The single sign-on web portal, okay? And as you can see in the top corner here, if you don't see any little icon, this is included in all services. So here we can set up a portal that the users log into with their Office 365 credentials that has icons for Office 365 plus third-party cloud-based apps. So what's the advantage of having all my users log into this single portal to access all their applications, do you think? Why would you bother implementing something like this for your customers? What's the benefit to the customer of you doing this? There's one login and password. It's the Office 365 login and password. That means when a user leaves the organisation, that password is revoked, that user is removed. They can no longer access even the third-party applications because they've always got to it through this portal. It also means you can implement what as additional security? Multi-factor authentication. So now you've got multi-factor on Office 365 and on your third-party applications. It also gives you advanced reporting. You can see who's using what, when using what, all that sort of stuff. Best part about this is it's free. Very few people, very few resellers are implementing it. From your point of view, what's the benefit to your business? Who's going to set it up? Who's going to maintain it? Who's going to provide reports for the customer? Sounds very much like what an MSP does. Set up, maintenance, reporting. Monthly fee to do this. Now, if you add Azure AD Premium, you also get group management. It adds these two icons. A user can go in and search for a group. So if a new user starts who's in marketing, they do a search for marketing. They find a marketing group. They ask for approval, which can be done by an employee. Once they're a member of that marketing group and they're approved, what do you think happens at the back end that you've set up and configured? What would happen once they're accepted into the marketing group as approved by another employee? What would happen, do you think? They'll gain access to the resources. They'll be added to a security group, which will then synchronize to on-prem, which will then allow them potentially access to on-premises files, which are still on a file server. Because Azure AD synchronizes back with Azure AD Premium to on-prem. Okay? So you're doing group security management in a portal. Okay? Use a password reset. Out of the box, if you have cloud-based users, you can set up a password reset portal so that when a user forgets their password, they can reset it. Okay? Most common ticket to a help desk is password reset. How much time does that take away from your business? And as I've mentioned before, unfortunately, most MSPs have incentivized customers to call them more with password resets or less with password resets. More, because you've given them an all-you-can-eat plan, call me anytime you want and I'll reset your password. Why would I even bother trying to do it myself? Hello, help desk, reset my password. Oh, forgotten it again, sorry about it, can you reset it? It's not scalable. So get the customer to do it themselves. And as mentioned, if you add Azure AD Premium, you now get two-way password synchronization, which means no matter where the user's account is, on-prem, in the cloud, they change their password to get synchronized so it's always the same. Okay? Who's going to set this up? You are. Who's going to maintain it? You are. Who's going to charge the license fee here to do Azure AD Premium? You are. Right? More revenue, more functionality for the customer. Solving pain points is what it's all about. The Security and Compliance Center. How many people have gone into this page in Office 365? Okay? Generally not a lot of people, right? It's very disappointing. Microsoft put a lot of time and effort, which they do with all their products, into security and compliance. But again, most resellers, most IT people don't even bother looking at it, spending the time learning it. In here, you'll see cool things like alerts. You'll see cool things like data loss prevention, threat management, search and investigation. Okay? Now, for example, what we can do in here, and again, this is included, note here, this is included in all plans. You can go in and do an audit log search of an activity between certain dates for certain users and get the report like a low-level event log that you can then export to something like Excel. Okay, you're looking for mysterious logins. You're looking for users who are doing things like this. I'll come to that. You can also set up retention policies. Part of your procedure or checklist when you go and talk to a customer should be, we implement retention policies for most of our customers. What would you like your retention policy to be? Here are the options. How would you like us to configure it for you? As I mentioned, you can also go in and do things like this. Left it out, I'll come to that, sorry. So data loss prevention, okay? So DLP, as noted here, is part of E3. It allows you to create rules on your data and then monitor and maintain it, okay? So you'll see here, first one I've got is a credit card policy. So if a user puts a credit card in an email body or as part of a file, that policy kicks in and then takes the actions that I've determined. Don't send the file, alert me, warn the user, do whatever. Okay? I can also do that with Australian financial data, tax file numbers, driver's licenses, all that sort of stuff. And you can create your own policy, turn them on, turn them off, and then report on them. Okay? You can also, as you see here, so we've got things like bank forms, right? And you can also do this cool thing here called document fingerprinting. So if you upload a template of a document you do not wish to leave the organisation or be tracked, every time the system sees that document going out as an email attachment or being downloaded or used with OneDrive or Team sites, you will be flagged. That will be flagged. So if you have a doctor who has a patient record, a solicitor who has a brief or whatever, as long as there's a template that looks like that document, you can use DLP fingerprinting. But again, you need E3 or above to do that. Mobile device management, this is what we talked about. So basically the idea here is, like anything, defense in depth. You have the Azure AD Premium to protect the user. You use things like Intune to apply device policies. And then you use Microsoft Intune again to apply it to the applications. And then you can use rights management to actually protect the information, the documents inside. All of these you can combine together in a suite that Microsoft provides to you that adds on to Office 365 called the Enterprise Mobility Suite. Okay, so this is an add-on, but it gives you rights management, Intune, Azure AD Premium, and something also called Advanced Threat Protection. But this is what you get out of the box with Office 365. You get conditional access, right? Which machines can access my Office 365? I get device management, and I also get the ability to do selective wipe. So selective wipe means person brings their iPad with their family photos, pictures of their children. You don't want to wipe that whole iPad when they leave the organisation. You just want to selectively wipe the corporate apps that they're using. If you want to be able to control the applications on that device, then you need to add Intune to the default Office 365 mobile device management. Okay? So again, selective wipe means that we can now remove or control the managed apps, the corporate apps on our device. If we want to do a selective wipe, they're the ones that are removed. So you'll see here that the policies we can set up include, out of the box, whether the device requires a password. You can prevent simple passwords. You can block the number of sign-ins before it will wipe the device. Okay? What do you do with these options? How do you deal with these options? You put all these in a checklist. You go to the customer and you say, would you like us to configure the default mobile device management you get with Office 365, no additional cost for you licensing-wise? Would you like a password? Would you like, and you just go through all the options and you tick them, and then you apply that policy using PowerShell and move on to the next customer. And they've got mobile device management implemented. Okay? But you can also do cool things like this: require an encrypted backup, block Bluetooth, block access to the application store. Again, ask your customer. Who's going to set it up? You are. Who's going to configure it? Who's going to manage it? You are. Okay? All free out of the box. So when a user gets a new device, and they go down to Harvey Norman or whatever on the weekend, it's the latest cool shiny thing, and they buy it, and then they try to log into Office 365 when you're not there, the policies you've put in place, thanks to mobile device management, kick in, and it will firstly ensure the device is valid, it's a valid device, it's secure, and then it will push down the policies that you've enabled so that users can get access to their corporate information. Okay? But you've got to set it up, you've got to manage it, you've got to maintain. It just makes life so much easier. If you want to add Intune, again, this is what you get out of the box with ActiveSync. This is what you get with Office 365. But as you see, if you add Intune, you can even go down and manage PCs on the desktop, if you so choose. Okay? The good thing about adding Intune is you get full control of the application. So, for example, a user can't receive a Word document and then copy and paste into Gmail and send it somewhere else. If your user wants that level of control, you can implement it by adding Intune or typically adding EMS. Now, one of the main things is obviously Intune is an add-on service like EMS. The general response you get from resellers about this is, my customers will never need this. My customers will never pay this. To which my response is you really need to go and ask them. You'd be surprised when you put a value statement to a customer that they would see value in this and be prepared to pay for it. Okay, so don't make that assumption. Go to them and show them the benefits. Explain to them the benefits. Okay? Customer Lockbox. Customer Lockbox is available in E5. If you have a customer who is paranoid about Microsoft or governments accessing their data, you can implement Customer Lockbox, which means that the customer then turns a key in their admin portal. If Microsoft needs to access their data, their mailboxes, their SharePoint, their OneDrive to do any work on it, they request a ticket back to the customer to unlock that data. That data is then unlocked for a period of time the customer determines. Once that's finished, the lock is then reapplied and Microsoft can't get access to it. This was created for the specific reason that in the US, the US court issues a secret court order to Microsoft telling it that it can't tell customers that the government wants access to their data. So Microsoft says, okay, if we give the customer the locking ability, that person still has to go to the customer and ask to get access. And again, what do you think they're bringing to this to provide you even more security? The ability to bring your own keys. So now it's fully encrypted with your own keys that nobody can get to. So if you leave the service, Microsoft can't do a data dump to the government, give them, well, they technically, who owns this data? It's junk, right? If that's the level you want to go to. For those people who are paranoid, again, talk to them about the options here. It is available for them. So hold and e-discovery. So we can put legal hold on documents, legal hold on emails, which means that no matter what the user does with those documents, they're kept and retained forever. Okay? Again, we can also set up deletion policies. Okay? And we can also search across all our information. Okay? So if you want to find out users who are making profane statements about the CEO, you can set that up, put that in as a search, save that search, run it regularly, report to the CEO every month on how many times his name is used with swear words. All right? Don't laugh because some CEOs will pay for that. Okay? But typically it's used if you need to search for a query or a legal issue. But again, you're going to need E3 or above to achieve a lot of this. Now the advanced security protection, which I talked about, is E5, and it gives you this security over your data. Typically what it's doing is it's using machine learning. So you can set up policies, you can set up effectively tripwires to do things like this. Right? Trigger me when there's a mass download by a single user of documents. When your key salesman suddenly resigns, what's typically happened? He's got a better offer from a competitor and they're going to copy all their data and then they're going to move on, aren't they? So again, we talked about the fact that you can't be retrospective with security, you've got to be proactive. This is the way to be proactive with this advanced threat protection. Logging in from an outdated browser, risky IP address, and of course, you can create your own custom policies. If you invest the time, create a custom policy, and you charge the first company X, you just copy and paste that into the next customer, the next customer, the next customer, and have it reporting back to you. Right? This is the level of security that you can go to, you can implement for you across all the information sources in Office 365. You also get multi-factor authentication. So out of the box, you get all these features with multi-factor authentication in Office 365. But if you add Azure AD Premium, you get all these features. The key one here is trusted IP. So this means that when the customer's at their office behind their static IP, they don't need to put in two-factor authentication. But when they're at the Qantas Club or when they're outside roaming on Wi-Fi, they have to put in two-factor authentication. Okay? Microsoft has also implemented the option, if you want, so that when the user puts their login details into Office 365, they get a confirmation message on their phone and they just push that to accept that. Again, probably not really good security, but for those CEOs who don't seem to be able to accommodate passwords, perfect for them. These are all the options that you get out of the box with Office 365, and you can add on with products like Azure AD Premium. To me, this is the killer app, right? This is the killer reason to sell E3. So information rights management will give you all these features out of the box with Office 365. If you pay for Azure Rights Management Service, you'll get 3 additional options. So rights management allows you to embed the permissions inside the document so they live no matter where they are. The 2 key features generally are users can track their documents and they can revoke document access. So if I create a document which is rights managed, I send that out to everybody as a basically as a tender. Someone wins that tender, I immediately revoke everybody else's access to that document. Even though you had access, you can now no longer have access. I have 1 user businesses that will pay for this because that's key to their organisation. Okay? Now the best way to sell this stuff is how? What is the best way to sell these sort of products, especially E3 and rights management? It's to use it yourself, right? So every quote you send to a customer, what does the customer generally do, the average customer? They'll then shop it around, compare it to somebody else, right? But if you put rights management on that document so it's locked to them, you're going to achieve 2 things. One, you protect your IP. Second thing is what? Customer's going to ask you, wow, how did you do this? Can we do this for our information? We'd love to be able to do this for this, this, and this. Every partner gets E3 and above. Every partner who has Action Pack or better has EMS. You have access to all these features already. Right? The best way to sell it is to use it yourself and implement it. Also, you should be protecting your own IP. The difference between you and the person sitting next to you is not the tools you use, is not products like Office 365 that everybody sells, it's your unique IP. If you aren't protecting that, that means other people can potentially steal it and make your business life very difficult. Okay? So again, protect the value of the information that you control. Rights management allows you to encrypt a document, control access, and if you add the premium option, to actually track it where it's been opened or attempted to be opened anywhere on the internet. All controlled, again, thanks to Azure AD. So the way it works is the user creates a document, they then determine who the recipient is, the expiry, whether they get notifications, and what this user can do, read only. They send that document to user 1, they log in, and then it reports back that was successful login. But this user sends it to another user who then attempts to log in and fails. That failure is then reported via an email back to the original user. Okay? Because information doesn't live on servers locked inside offices anymore. It's roaming wild out there on the streets. People are using it on their mobile devices, they're sending it to everybody, but they still want the protection. There aren't many vendors that I know of that can do this sort of rights management. It's a key differentiator, a key feature of E3, and a key thing you should be selling to customers. All right? Conditional access. Did you know that Office 365 out of the box gives you the ability to control access from devices that aren't compliant or joined to a domain? You can control access and stop machines that aren't compliant or joined to a domain from accessing your data, here, now, with every tenant. And guess what? You can also do. You can restrict who has access via IPs. If you're billing a customer for Office 365 and they don't pay their bills, you put your own IP address in there and they can't get access to it no matter where they are. Not the right thing to do perhaps, but that's the power of it. But if you put the wrong IP address in there and save it, that's it, it's gone, right? So again, but this is the power. You go to the customer and you say to them, we have the ability to do this in Office 365. Do you want us to turn it on and do this for you? You charge to set it up, you charge to maintain it, and you charge to troubleshoot it. Available out of the box. No additional cost with every Office 365 plan. Now, to round off, I will also talk to you and mention something called the Microsoft Operations Management Suite, OMS. Okay, so OMS gives you the ability to tap into your on-prem devices, your on-prem equipment, servers, workstations. It allows you to tap into Office 365 services. It allows you to tap into Azure services and report all of that in a single dashboard. Okay? It will give you access to all the logs in Office 365 and it will aggregate them into OMS and allow you to search them in a single location. Now, Microsoft OMS, you can get started with Microsoft OMS today for a grand total of how much? $0. The entry-level plan of 500 meg of log data retained for 7 days is free. So you can start sucking all the logs in and reporting on those for customers, even if they don't want it. It's going to give you that control. So what I do, because I don't do on-prem stuff, but I look after my family's machines. So all my family machines, laptops, report into OMS. I know when they need patches. I know if there's a security threat. I know how much space they're using on Office 365. I know how many emails they've got. I can dig into every single login that they make to the service for a grand total of $0. I can monitor all the backups because all the backups from their machines go to Azure Backup, which I get as part of my excuse me, partner plan for a total cost of $0. Right? I know how to use this. I know how to sell this stuff because I use the stuff. Right? You get all this for free. So again, if you haven't looked at OMS, I would strongly encourage you to go to oms.microsoft.com, sign up, link it to your Azure account, which you get for free, and then certainly hook it up and start playing with some machines. So don't have enough time to go into that, but that's an additional add-on to Office 365 Azure and the services Microsoft has. So to take away, Office 365 has got more built-in security than most people have any concept of. Most people are accepting the defaults. Okay? I get a lot of inquiries from people who come to me and they say, Office 365 is not scanning or not preventing malware and spam getting through. What do you think my answer or my response to that is? Have you actually gone in and configured and tweaked the standard settings? Because Microsoft by default sets a default setting which is best for the widest range of people, which is probably not good for what you want. Have you actually ever gone in there and configured it and tightened it down? Oh no. If you bought a third-party service, you would still have to probably do the same thing. Now, once you configure it once, what do? Put it into a script and you run it every single time against every other customer. That's the great thing about Office 365 and Azure. You can script the whole lot. Right? The more advanced plans give you more security. You get what you pay for. Right? You don't have to make customers more paranoid. You have to make them understand what? The financial impact that's going to happen to their business if they don't implement decent security. All right? Remember, it only takes one vulnerability. What's the cost to their business of them being down? So you're going to extend it even further with OMS, Azure, Intune, rights management, Azure AD Premium, the list goes on. So Office 365 is not the end of the journey. Office 365 is just the beginning of what you can sell as a licensing point of view, but also the services you can bundle around it. Right? More options, more services, more ways for you to make revenue. And again, we've added more security features. So Microsoft, again, as I said, they've now given you the ability to bring your own keys into the encryption part of your tenant's information. Okay? All of these security features are being added over time. Again, you look to build services and revenue from the additional compliance and security. Go and ask your customers, do you need legal hold? What happens if this happened? Has this ever occurred to you? What would happen if? Here's a solution. My advice to you strongly is to go and talk to your customers immediately about rights management. Do you want your documents and information protected when they leave your organisation? Most customers say, yeah, absolutely, I want to be able to do that. Very easy to set up, manage and maintain. And again, if you add Azure on top of Office 365, you've got infinitely more opportunities. Because Azure you can back end into machine learning, right? Security is generally all about looking for anomalies. That's not right. Hang on, why is that? Why are they logging in at 3 o'clock in the morning from Tokyo when they live in Maroubra? Okay? That's the way you find security stuff. You're looking for things that don't add up. Okay? Machine learning and things in Azure allow you to do that with big data. OMS basically will suck in all your event logs into one area and apply machine learning across it all and say, you know what? This doesn't look good, or this is a bit suspect, or we've seen a lot of this. That's the way you compete. You use the power of big data to suck in all the low-level analytics from your logs and get the machines and the bots working on it for you. So some resources there for you, some more resources, and that's where this presentation is right here, right now. So if you want to take a picture of that so that you can download this document, and once we've done that, while we're doing that, are there any questions on that information that I've presented? Now, obviously, there's a lot more we could go into, but hopefully that's given you a good overview, given you the ability or showing you the focus on the higher end packages is an option, and showing you that, importantly, there's revenue to be made in the additional options. There's more information from me on my blog, some free training on SharePoint, Office 365, tutorials, do a regular podcast, and also some publications. I encourage everybody to connect with me using my Skype for Business address, because it's much easier to get in contact and solve a problem generally using Skype than using email, bouncing it backwards and forwards. But are there any questions?